Hey everyone, and welcome to the Tom's Hardware Show for May 6th, 2021. Our regular host Sharon Harding is on vacation this week, so I'm stepping in. So I'm stepping in for her. If you watch some of our other show, the podcast, you know I'm Tom's Hardware Editor in Chief, Abram Pilch, and today we are joined by a very special guest. Victoria Contraviction Brown, an incredible retro gaming expert who has pretty much every console, probably right behind her actually.
Yeah, I love your background.
And
Thank you.
and staff writer Michelle Earhart is with us also.
Hi, Abram. Hi, Victoria.
Hey, thank you
Hi.
so much for joining us. It's such an honor to have you on the show. Your channel is just amazing, where you do really in-depth dives on the hardware of old systems, and then it's just also kind of emotional because you have all these episodes where you talk to people about their first gaming experiences and old console experiences. So, how did you get into retro gaming?
Well, I am a 90s kid, so I've always been around different types of video games. My very first console was the N64. My grandmother introduced that game to me, and we played a lot of Banjo-Kazooie and, Super Mario Super Mario 64. Anything in relation to the N64, I was able to play. So over time, I'm blessed to have parents that, when a game comes out or when a new console comes out, they purchase it and they bring it into the house. And I'm just introduced to so many different types of genres, whether it's JRPG, first person shooter games, action adventure games, racing games, you name it. So it's always been, a core of mine when it comes to gaming, and it's just led on to me being as an adult. So uh, yeah, that's all I got. I love retro games. It's always been there for me. So it's made me who I am. So
This might be the rare episode where I get to show off my Kirby that I have. I used to put this hidden in every single one of my reviews for the sites, but we're more of a PC site, so it's nice to be able to dive into the console side again.
I love it. I love it. I'm currently looking for a Kirby game for my GameCube collection. I have a
Oh,
huge GameCube collection.
User asks, what's Contra's favorite retro gaming console?
Oh, what's up, Hustle? My favorite game of all time. That's a great question. My favorite game of all time is Chrono Trigger on the Super Nintendo. Um, Another favorite of mine is Metal Gear Solid, the first one on PlayStation, and on the Dreamcast, my favorite game of all time is Crazy Taxi. So those are some three pretty good ones that I love with a passion. I'll never get tired of those games.
Chrono Trigger and Crazy Taxi have actually been like really big in my apartment during the pandemic because I finally decided to sit down and watch all of Dragon Ball GT earlier in the pandemic. And I was like, oh, I want a game that kind of feels like this. And, the Dragon Ball artist did the art for Chrono Trigger. So I played through all of that during the pandemic. And then Crazy Taxi has kind of been like my boyfriend and I's linked to sort of the arcades that we can't go to anymore while we've been at home.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what's the oldest console that you have? Because you collect how many consoles do you have, and what's the oldest one?
I have over 20 different consoles. So the oldest one that I have is the Atari 2600. That's currently upstairs. It's not in this collection. The most expensive console is the Neo Geo. It's currently sitting. Actually, I could turn the camera. It's currently sitting up here, sitting nice and pretty. And as you can tell, I also collect a lot of consoles that are in box. That's one of my go-to things, is making sure that I have the original box to go with the console. So I have over 20 different consoles. Like, you name it, I probably have it. The only thing that I'm missing currently is the Jaguar. What else am I missing? I'm missing the Jaguar. I am missing. There is this one console in particular that's only released in Japan that I really, really want, but it's only like but it's like worth over like $4,000. So I'm just gonna have to wait on that. But
The
which one is
Wonderswan,
that?
or
that one it's like a TV.
oh,
It's what is it called though? It's like it's a TV that you can play like Sega games on it. I completely forgot what it's called. It slipped my mind, but yeah, it's very expensive. They only released it in Japan. I wish they released it here. That would be so awesome. So I only have a handful of import games that, if I were to be able to play that, it would be awesome if I got my hands on it. So
That's awesome. So like, what is your Kenneth asks, playing retro games is one thing, but how did you get into streaming them?
that's a great question. So I have received this question a lot. I didn't dedicate myself to streaming and playing games online until like a few years ago. In regards to how do you play retro games online, there are different ways of doing that. So I have a capture card that's from Aver Media, and when it comes to playing different games online, you have to have like a HDMI converter. So to be more specific, because I do have stuff right here in case I got a question like that. Let's say, for example, I got a lot of cords. Let's say, for example, you have an N64, right? And you wanted to play like Mischief Makers. On the back, there is a place for you to have the AV, which is this. You plug this here, and this goes into the Fatbat TV for your AV cables. Now, when it comes to streaming the N64, what you do is have a converter like this, and this is called the HDMI splitter hyperlink. On the end, you have the exact same end, just like the original AV cable, and on the other side, you have an HDMI cord. This is how you're able to plug this into a capture card, whatever capture card you end up using, and plugging it up to your monitor or your flat screen TV, whatever you end up using, and then stream it that way. So if you want other people to watch you play the game, you can. And that's exactly how I'm able to do it on my channel.
Fantastic. So if folks want to get into playing retro games, what's the easiest way and what's the best way?
Well, there's different options. So if you were to currently have a older console like I do, the HDMI splitter cables is the best route to go, along with a capture card. If you were to play with a mini, like I know these are discontinued, but if you wanted to play with the mini, these are just regular HDMI cords, and you just use a USB mini as the power. Same thing with the capture card. Now, the third option is if you were to get an emulator. So you could just go online, you can go on Google and just type in like whatever different type of games you want to play, whether that's from Sega, Nintendo, PlayStation, you name it. And there's different sites that will allow you to have an emulator. Or if you wanted to download a ROM to hack a mini, you can do that as well.
All
So
legally, of course.
All legally, yes.
Dumped from the cartridge, bespoke in our farms. No, I can't. Farm to table. What do you think of like the Retron 5 and these other reproduction consoles that sort of take your cartridges and dump them, the ROMs out onto the console to play through emulation, but like physically?
I think it's an interesting concept. Me personally, I don't own those, but for an average person who doesn't want to invest all their time and money trying to find a console that actually works, that would be the best option. So if you do have the games, because a lot of people like to buy their games loose, just pop that bad boy in and see if it works. And if it works, then hey, who's to stop you from playing a game using that different type of third party?
Awesome.
So, do you find that, like, you obviously go out and you buy the old consoles, which has got to be somewhat of a challenge to find and could be expensive at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, why do you do that as opposed to using the emulators? What's the advantage?
Well, I am always team physical. So even from physical games, I rather have things physically. Now, I don't, I mean, I don't, I'm not going to shoot someone in the foot for, wanting to play an emulator. Because if that's an option for them, then they can. If they're used to playing things on PC and they don't want to go out and buy a console, then who's to stop them from doing that? So, me personally, I like things physical, but if there was an option to play on emulators, like currently, I want to be able to play retro games with people that, stream with them. But, due to the pandemic, I can't be able to play those different types of games with people. So there are different options of playing emulators, especially through different programs like Parsec. You can be able to remote play with different people for retro games.
So, someone asks, how has collecting been during the pandemic?
It's been a doozy, I will tell you that. So right before the pandemic, it was a lot easier to invest in collecting. I will say that. But, when the pandemic happened, everyone's bored and they wanted to deep dive in their passions. So, there's some people that wanted to get into gardening. There's other people who wanted to start working out. And then there's people like me who rather collect a lot of their older games and play them at home. And there's nothing wrong with that. But with people wanting to play a lot more games, they're going to go to the stores and they're flooding them, buying up all of the different types of games, especially GameCube, which in turn will make a lot of those game values increase drastically. Like, for example, like Def Jam Fight for New York, I end up spending about $80 for that game. Before the pandemic, it was about $40, $50, but it shot right up when the pandemic happened. And now, even owning it for $80, it's worth so much more than that. It's over $120 now, which is crazy. So for someone who really wants to collect, it's been really hard. It's a lot more competition. It's a lot more fish trying to get the exact same hook as me. So it's been difficult, but over time you just learn to roll with the punches and just create different types of relationships with the game stores too. So different game stores that I visit, I know the owners. So when they post things online, it's like, hey, do you mind holding that to the side if possible? Can I go and pick that up? If I have to pay more, let me know. But it's been a doozy trying to collect during the pandemic. So, but that's what makes the adventure that much greater, Then you have a story behind how you got this game. It's like, oh man, I've been looking for this game for a long time, but I drove to South Carolina and I came across a smaller game store that isn't getting as much traction, and they have the rarest games that I'm looking for. It gives me the opportunity to tell other people how I discovered this game, where I was able to get this from, and give more marketing to those game stores. And then the second option is, like, as much as I'm against buying online, there is that option. If you're interested, expensive. eBay is extremely expensive, depending on what you're looking for. So if you're in the US, there is Macari. You can go, and it's kind of like Let Go. Like, you can go and buy stuff that way. Or if you wanted to go on Facebook Marketplace, just be very careful about that. Sometimes people still like fake stuff. Be very careful about that. But besides that, there's a lot of intricacies when it comes to collecting. So Yeah, it's one wild adventure during the pandemic. That's the best way to end it.
Do you ever have to fix something? Do you ever get a console that
Ooh.
didn't work as expected?
Yes. So, on my channel, I used to do console deep dives, and when you pop open a console, sometimes there are some things that are out of place. Some things aren't plugged in where it should be or connected the wrong way. If you know what you're doing, it's easier said than done to fix a console. Now, granted, there's some things that is like completely unsavable. Like if the CPU is fried because that's the brain of the console, there's nothing you can do about that at all. But if there's little things that you can be able to fix, I mean, go for it. I like if you're someone who is experienced with fixing technical things, then try it. But if you're someone who is just like, oh, I don't want to spend that much for a console, and you see something that says, oh, used for parts, I wouldn't recommend it, because then you're going through too much of a hassle with fixing a console when you can just buy something that already works, just pay a little bit more.
What about like aesthetics? So like if you get a Super Nintendo, a lot of them are like old and yellowed and stuff. And I've seen videos of people cleaning them up. How do you go about doing that? Have you done that?
Well, I'm glad that I'm able to find a lot of my consoles that are already clean. Like, for example, when I bought the Dreamcast,
Oh,
it still
that's
stayed this
beautiful.
color. It still stayed this color, but I know that there's other Dreamcasts that's more yellow, like the Super Nintendo. There's different options. Like if you go on YouTube, I believe there's other people who use the dishwashing method. Be careful about that. The dishwashing method, which
Like
is
put it in a dishwasher?
yes.
Oh my God.
You literally take everything apart. You take out the motherboard, CPU, everything, and you have just the shell. And there's a particular way to put it in the dishwasher and clean it. I don't know if you can do that with every single console, but I know with certain consoles you can be able to get away with that. The other option that I've seen people do is I don't know what it's called, but what they do is they put a paste on the console, and they put it in a box where it's nothing but aluminum, and they're using LED to brighten up the console on its own for like some hours. Like some people leave it in for like 6 hours or something like that. If you know what you're doing, go for it. If you don't know what you're doing, please don't try it at home. That is dangerous. But there's some people who've done that way where they're able to brighten up the colors. And then there's other people where, if you wanted to just have somebody like do a design or mod it, you can do it that way too. There's different options, but I'm lucky enough to not have to do that to my consoles. I rather have it where it's already in pristine condition, but there's different options if someone were to have a yellow console.
So, NNE Saga S, if you had to recommend an SNES game to someone in 2021, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a great question. So I have so many. Um, if I were to pick something that was on budget, like not too expensive, you can always get something like Turtles in Time is a classic. If you're into JRPGs, there's Secret of Mana, there's Chrono Trigger. If you're into fighting games, there's like Killer Instinct. Like there's so many Super Nintendo games, but a lot of people's go-to if they first wanted to start out on the SNES, like there's always Super Mario World. That's a definite classic. So if I wanted to introduce someone to the SNES, I would say try Super Mario World. You can never go wrong with Mario games. Down the line, when I finally have kids, that's probably one of the first games I'm going to introduce them to. So there's that, and Super Mario RPG. There's so many like SNES games, but if I were to introduce that to someone, if they're into RPGs, I would say Chrono Trigger. If they just want something basic to start off, I would say Super Mario World.
Isaac is really into Mario, isn't he, Avram?
Oh yeah, my 9-year-old. He is really into Mario. Right now, his big thing is Mario Kart Live. He loves that. He loves that game where you can actually physically drive around. And lately he's been making me put on videos for him where he watches people like some really weird channel. Perhaps you've seen it where the Mario and Luigi are like stuffed animals and they talk to each other.
Oh, that sort of trend. I've seen the articles about those videos.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not my favorite, but yeah, he's really into those, and he was really into Kirby at one point, and super into Sonic at one point. I potty trained him with Sonic. That was how I potty trained him a few years back. He got to the age where he was way old enough to have been potty trained, but he didn't want the inconvenience to stop playing or stop video gaming or whatever by taking off his diaper and going to the potty. So at one point, and this to show you how, he and I were playing on PS3, right? And at one point, he really wanted to play like Sonic Racing, and we bought it at GameStop. And I said, "You have to use the potty if you want to unlock this." And so, like, it took him, a couple of weeks, but then he was like, "I really want to play that game." I was like, "Well, then you really need to pee," and that worked. So, however, I think I would recommend to most people, try to get your kids potty trained before they're old enough to ask to need that strategy. My daughter, who's 2, I think she'll, way before she is old enough for that to be bribed that way. We'll be potty trained. But we have another question from Janae, which is, how many game stores have you visited?
Ooh, how many game stores? There's so many. Okay, so there's 4 here in Atlanta. So 4. I've been to 1 in Alabama. Surprisingly, they don't have that many game stores. I've been to Savannah. They do have a game store, really dope game store, by the way, called Planet Fun. It's really awesome. So far, I've been to 4, 5, 6, 2 in North Carolina, 1 in South Carolina, and 2 in Virginia. So far, I've been to 11 game stores. Last year alone, I went to 11 game stores in this year.
Nice.
So I'm showing on the screen the total URL to your YouTube channel, but what is the easiest way to get to get your channel? To go to YouTube and search for Contraviction?
Yes, they can do that, or if they want to type in like youtube.com/contraviction, it will pop up there as well. Yeah,
Cool.
I try to post as much as I can, so I'm getting right back into the grind starting next week. Actually, there's been a lot of people asking me like, what type of games do I have? So starting on Monday, everyone will be able to start seeing like, what kind of games do I have. So the first video will be the different types of Xbox games that I have. So there's a huge collection down here. This doesn't tell the full story behind me. This is some really exciting stuff, I would say.
It'll be cool when travel starts happening again and you get to go to more game stores too. If you ever come to New York, Video Games New York is a great local game store that has all sorts of old consoles, mods, different accessories and stuff. Book Off too is another good one. I'm just sharing my
of course. Like, I love game stores. Me and a colleague of mine, we are starting a new YouTube channel where we're showing everyone our adventures at different game stores. That will be out sometime this month, actually. A lot of people want to know what to look for, how to identify fake cartridges, how to identify like if a store is overcharging on a game compared to you buying it somewhere else. There's just a whole bunch of episodes where we'll be able to teach people how to properly collect different types of games, whether you're buying online or if you go to different stores. And there's a lot of people that say that they don't have game stores around them. And why not go on an adventure to find those game stores for them that may be 10 miles down the road and they never know. So, yeah.
So speaking of ways to play games, I just wanted to show for folks who haven't seen it a couple other possible ways. So here I have, so if you own a Raspberry Pi or you don't and just want to get one because they're not expensive, there's a lot of opportunities to use some emulation system called RetroPie, which is a free download, and it has emulators for like built in for like every console plus arcade games. And so here's a case for the Raspberry Pi called the RetroFlag GPI case. I believe this is around $60. And you take a Raspberry Pi Zero, which is a $5 Raspberry Pi, and you put it in the cartridge section here, but there's no real cartridges. And then you can install RetroPie on it and any games you want. Now, granted, it's a, games that don't use this type of control might not be the most fun to play on this. But it will work. Like this will play Dig Dug or whatever old arcade games. Another thing I have right here in the same vein is called the Picade.
That is so cool.
So this is, a lot of people like to make, this isn't the only one on the market for sure. I know Micro Center has their own ones or whatever. This comes from a company called Pimoroni in the UK, but you can get it here. And it is also Raspberry Pi powered. You have to get it. This works with a Raspberry Pi 4. You can get one for Raspberry Pi 3. This, you can get it with an 8-inch or 10-inch screen. This one has the 10. This is also running RetroPie. And it has, it has six buttons there, plus 2 in the front and 2 on the side. And it comes with this old school arcade joystick. So it's pretty cool. This is an interface to RetroPie, so you can see it just like divides all your games by platform, and then you can go into the menu, and play. You can also just take a Raspberry Pi and connect it to your TV or a screen of any kind, plug in a controller and run it. Or you can do what my son and I did at one point, which is you can actually buy the arcade stick and the button and the clicky buttons, drill holes in a plastic box and put it in, and you have an arcade box and connect that to a screen. So there's a lot of ways. I mean, I think those ways are more arcade. I mean, this is more of a Game Boy style. That's more of a, I mean, you can play anything you want on it, but it's more, I guess, optimized for playing like stand-up arcade games, old school. Do you like to play those as well?
Yes, I do. I'm not very experienced with Raspberry Pi, but I would love to learn more about how to mod different games when it comes to using the Raspberry Pi. Because I remember we talked about that before, and I thought that was like really cool. So I would love to learn how to use it. That's pretty dope.
Do you play like retro arcade games at all? I mean, obviously it's hard to get the the cabinets and all that, but are there any like old school like stand-up arcade games that you like to play?
Oh yeah. So I just went to the arcade like a couple weeks ago actually. They had, what game did they have? Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. Oh, they had different games like what is that game called? Mesh? No, not that one. Wait. What's the one where there's so many lights and oh, why am I drawing a blank? Oh my God. The one where you're shooting, it's from Atari. It's a shooting game.
Centipede?
No, not Centipede. It's
Missile Command?
Missile Command. They're in space though. It's very popular. I don't know why I can't remember. I think
Defender?
it was Galaga.
Oh,
Galaga.
Galaga was my son's favorite and my favorite when we go to the arcade. He loves that game. I love that game, especially if you go to where I haven't been since the pandemic started. But if you go to like one of those kind of grown-up arcades where you get the tickets, like there you can play Galaga for tickets too. So we would go and play Galaga for tickets. and they have like redone some of these retro games in the newer arcades. So
Mhm.
you go and it's like, oh, here's Space Invaders, but you actually have a real gun to shoot the Space Invaders, which is kind of cool because they obviously originally didn't have that, uh, which is awesome. So speaking of cool stuff, Michelle, you have been looking into the best webcams for streaming, which I know is something that Victoria does a lot, and obviously we're streaming a bit right here. So what have you found?
Sure. So I've reviewed a whole bunch of different webcams, and today I have 3 different webcams across like 3 different price points set up for us to look at. What I'm streaming on right now is the Logitech C920, which is also what Victoria is using, I believe, the C922. And Avram, you're also using a C920, correct?
Yep,
So
yep.
this is
It's the most popular webcam by far, right? It's the gold standard.
This is kind of our gold standard 1080p webcam. It was really hard to find earlier in the pandemic, but it's much easier to find now. It's about $70. It gives you solid video quality, but you're not going to get any special bonus features. So especially during the pandemic, with a lot of work from home stuff, a lot of different companies have started to like jump in and offer their own different webcams. So if I can swap over right now, this is the Anker PowerConf C300 webcam from Anker, which is the sort of power charger company that you might be more familiar with. I reviewed this recently. It's $130, so it's a little more expensive than the C920. And it's got a lot of different streaming modes. You'll notice right now that this mode has a wider field of view than the Logitech I was on. It's got somewhat of a different color quality. Right now, the image fidelity doesn't look as great, but you can tweak that how you wish. I actually really liked this webcam when I reviewed it because I think for like still images, it produced a quality that was generally on par with the C920, which you can see in our review when it comes out fairly soon. But it also has 60 FPS and HDR modes. I don't have the HDR turned on right now, which is also going to affect the fidelity, but it'll help the stream go faster if I don't have these extra things turned on. But 60 FPS is really nice for game streamers because a lot of games tend to stream at 60 frames per second, and you don't always want your webcam image to conflict with that at a different frame rate. It's maybe a little easier on your viewers if your face cam is at the same frame rate as your gameplay footage. But a lot of the webcams that do 60 FPS are very expensive. So I feel like this is a good intro brand. It's just 1080p. The image quality isn't as great as you're going to get with something like a Logitech Brio or our next option. But, it's only a little bit more expensive than the Logitech. It generally has the same image fidelity, but it has those bonus features like HDR and 60 FPS. And I'll have to move around a lot to get it to activate. So I don't know if it's gonna, but it's also got like AI framing. So it'll zoom in on you and follow you around the camera. But then if you want to go the absolute best of the best, I have the Razer Kio Pro here. Which you can already see the bump in image quality. This is still 1080p. This is not a 4K camera, but this comes with a built-in light sensor that's really good and helps the camera sort of adjust the color quality based on the lighting in your environment. So I found that I got like really high fidelity shots with this, and I didn't miss the ring light that was included on the previous Kio, which was sort of their earlier solution to this. But this one also has a 60 FPS option to it and HDR option. All those bonus options that came with the Anker PowerConf camera. But it's $200. It's a little higher quality image. You get that light sensor. And I'm using the microphone right now to get the best sound quality, but I'm using my headset microphone, but the Razer Kio is like maybe the only webcam I've tested that has a microphone that I would feel comfortable making like actual calls with.
Yeah. Also, you notice that the anime figures behind you definitely look the best on the Razer.
Yeah,
So,
right. These things are actually really good for testing out my shots because I like to test both, how they deal with the focus image. It's my face that's the most important, right? Always. But it's good to know how the it handles all the different background colors as well. A lot of times in the Logitech, they're rendered in very cool colors. They're very washed out. You can hardly see the Gundam because it's a sea of white anyway. But this you can see all those reds and blues and yellows.
so do you like your C922? Have you tried any other cameras, Victoria?
This has been sticking with me for the past 3 years now, so I haven't had any issues with it. I am interested in seeing what it will be like to use a Sony camera as my camera when I stream. I spoke to a few people recently, and they use a dummy battery to streamline through the PC. So that will be the camera quality that's much better compared to the webcam. But I gotta test it out first. So this is my winner so far.
Yeah, no doubt it's been a great, like, I've been using the C920 for like 6 years, and it's been on the market for about 10 years, I think, and nothing has really surpassed it. The 922 is basically, I think, the 920 with a couple extra features.
Right.
And then there's the 930, which is a slightly wider field of view. So it's hard to beat.
I bought the C920 before I even moved to New York, and now it's like the standard that I'm testing 90% of the webcams I review against. It's wild to see that it's still relevant in that way.
I like to see innovation, though. I mean, we hadn't seen a lot of innovation in webcams until this year, and I think this has really brought that to people's attention, especially the fact that laptop webcams are terrible and have always been terrible.
They're awful. I was talking with some other writers earlier this morning, and someone mentioned that he always hates seeing 720p on a laptop webcam feature list, but I was almost shocked because that's always what it is. It's never going to be over 720p.
They're never any good. Well, we're running out of time, but before we go, I just wanted to mention something that I had been meaning to mention at the beginning of the hour, which is including you. So we are associated with, I mean, we know the folks who run Including You. We've helped them get some devices before. IncludingYou.org is an organization started by 12-year-old Daisy Hampton, and she helps kids primarily in the New York City schools, and now apparently also teachers who don't have working computers to do remote school. And this is apparently a serious problem where they're literally been getting calls from teachers the last few weeks saying, I can't run my class because the school district issued device broke and the IT department doesn't have another one for me, which is ridiculous. But they take donations of your old PC equipment, whether desktops, laptops, even hotspots, keyboards, mice, webcams, things that kids need or teachers need to get online. And they also have a GoFundMe for taking donations cash-wise. So I just wanted to say, if you're interested in helping them, check out includingyou.org. Thank you so much to Victoria for joining us. It's been a real honor and a privilege. And Victoria's going to be doing some writing for us, which we're super excited about. Thank you to Michelle. And of course, thank you to all of you for tuning in. We are here every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern. And we have our other show, the podcast, at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. I host the podcast. Usually Sharon hosts this show, and she'll be back next week. So we'll see you then. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.